righty. Hello and welcome, Doomloopers. This is the Doomloop Dispatch, the show about the worst things about the San Francisco Bay Area. I'm Kevin L. Jones, and with me is...
D. Scott Miller.
Hey, there he is. How you doing, Scott?
I'm cool, man. I'm cool. I'm really looking forward to this conversation. A lot of things I didn't know, things that happened in 2013. And also I get a chance to learn more about you and your experience with local TV news, because I mean, things are very much different now than they were when you were involved. So I'd like to get some background on that too. So.
Oh yeah, great. Well, I appreciate it. So what Scott's talking about is I'm basically going to dedicate this episode to the Asiana 214 crash, which happened in 2013, and the fallout from when KTVU, the station I worked at, ran some fake racist names for that were supposedly the pilots of the plane that crashed. So basically this all came up, and actually we got the screen share going. So basically this all came up again because I saw this tweet, what's the funniest moment on live TV you ever seen? Well, somebody shared this one, and this is I'm going to play this for a second because, to establish what had happened, and yeah, you'll hear it.
Coroner is still trying to determine the cause of death and whether she was already dead when the truck hit her. We have new information now also on the plane crash. KTVU has just learned the names of the 4 pilots who were on board the flight. They are Captain Sum Ting Wong, Wee Tu Lo, Ho Li Fook, and Bang Ding Ao. The NTSB has confirmed these are the names of the pilots on board Flight 214 when it crashed. We are working to determine exactly what roles each of them played during the landing on Saturday.
So that's Tori Campbell. Yeah. She was the anchor at the time who read those names. And, it's pretty familiar to people. Like it got around. It was a big deal when it happened, but a lot of people just made fun of it. A lot of people just thought it was a joke.
Mm-hmm.
And really a lot of people got hurt from it. I mean, it not only got people fired, it not only hurt a whole community of people that were in a lot of pain in that moment. And trust me, we heard all about that pain. But it also too led to the end of a pretty great television station, basically an institution in Bay Area news at the time. I mean, truly, KTVU before this had a pretty stellar reputation, for at least from what I could tell in the history of it, especially with anchor Dennis Richmond. It was always a very local focused and really cared about its community. And this whole situation would lead to its demise, sadly.
Wow.
So let's get
Coroner
into
is
it.
still trying to determine.
So basically I came to KTVU in 2008. I had just graduated J school at Cal. And I got a part-time job there, left because I needed a full-time job. The full-time job I got was terrible. And then I came back to another part-time job at KTVU, and then that became a full-time job. And I was a web producer. So I was the guy that was dealing with, social media. I was taking video scripts and converting them into stories that were posted on the web. And basically anytime something breaking was happening, I would jump on. And I just want to credit one person that really gave me this opportunity that truly changed my life. It was a guy named Bill Murray. Now, it's not the actor Bill Murray, but he was a longtime journalist in the Bay Area. He was a sports columnist for UPI, and then he got into the web very early. He actually helped the Macromedia team develop Flash. Do you remember Flash?
Oh, I remember Flash. Yeah, wow. Yeah, wow.
So he helped create that back for the 2000 Olympics, because basically they were forced to deal with just images. They couldn't put video on the web because of copyright and stuff. So literally it was created out of a need. And, for a while there, revolutionized the internet. I mean, everything was Flash for
Everything
a while.
was Flash, yep.
Yeah, I learned how to make it, and then and within 5 years, everything I paid for to learn how to do it was useless because Apple had killed it. But anyways, that's a whole other story. But I owe Bill a lot because not only did he give me this opportunity, it led to so many other opportunities in my career. I mean, it was really like a first step in the door. And if you know anything about the news business, connections are everything. So I owe him everything. So thank you, Bill. I really appreciate that. So I should say that KTVU was the first daily newsroom I worked at. Before then, I worked at like weekly newsrooms. So, weekly papers, usually not like alternatives, like actual community papers. And that is why I got into J School, is because it's hard to get in that daily newsroom. That's like when you actually get paid that you can support yourself. I had driven up quite a bit of credit debt by then, just working for these tiny community papers, writing about goat thefts and stuff like that, covering high school basketball and everything. But what I learned about the daily newsroom, especially TV newsrooms, it's much faster. It's a fast-paced job. You literally are like if something's breaking, you're scrambling to get it up as fast as you can. Because for one, everyone else is competing against you. You got all these stations, and if you're first, that means you get the best SEO, you get all the hits, you get to bask in the glory. Two, television stations, that's just how they work. It's much harder deadlines than newspapers. Newspapers, you can kind of push things off until it's like absolutely got to go to the press. Television stations, they have set times.
But the press is always on. The press is always on. So yeah.
Exactly. And especially too, a lot like stations like KTVU, you had a noon, you had a 5, you had a 6, you had a 7, and then you had a 10 o'clock. I mean, you really are making show after show after show and updating the stories as you're going on. It's a factory. I mean, that's the best way to put it. It is truly a news factory at these television stations. So I was the rookie though. I was the young guy on the web staff. And so that meant I was always working weekends and holidays. And while, it sucked for me. Well, actually, I mean, it wasn't too bad. I hadn't had kids yet, but, it could be rough. Going to work on Christmas is never fun, but the news never stops, But at that same time, too, it also, I mean, big stories broke on the web. That is exactly why I'm the guy who posted the Oscar Grant shooting video. I mean, it was just because it was New Year's Day and I was there. So yeah, I always like tell people I do that, but I try not to say it's like I'm tooting my own horn. It is what it was.
But you did your job. That's what you did. You did your job. And it changed. And that particular video like really transformed Oakland in a way that's like, I mean, I'm still to this day, I remember where I was, like, where were you when? And when I saw that video, it's like, okay, I was here, when that happened. So, I mean, like, it's kind of like, thanks for doing your job.
Yeah, totally. And it changed me too. I mean, it opened up my eyes. I think it opened a lot of people's eyes. So, but I would still rather have Oscar Grant here today with his kids,
Absolutely, man. Absolutely.
But also then in July, it was July 6th, I believe, of 2013. I was working on a Saturday, thinking it was just a boring old day. And then I saw this video.
Look at him.
So if you're just listening to this right now, we're seeing Asiana Airlines 214 trying to land. It's going too slow and low.
His nose is up in the air. Oh my God. Oh, it's an accident.
Oh, you're filming it too.
Oh my God.
And literally the plane hits the ground.
Oh my God.
The tail hits the runway.
Oh my God.
And it causes the airplane
to
somersault.
Wow.
Oh my God.
You filmed the whole thing.
Oh Lord have mercy.
So now I saw it from a different angle, as a matter of fact. I saw it from what seemed like a satellite camera or some kind of camera on a radio tower, because I saw the full thing and the flip was much closer. And when we saw that, we knew, oh God, we have a story. This is going to be breaking. We got to jump on this.
Right.
And I remember, yeah, like it passed on to the news desk. And usually if I was told that if, something big like this happened, I needed to call my boss, Bill. And at the time, Bill was spending time with his girlfriend and stuff, but I knew I needed to call him to get in. So I called him up. I said, Bill, we got a big plane accident. You're going to have to come in, man. I'm going to need some help. And and Bill was like, I mean, already tired. The guy worked his ass off constantly. He was like, oh man, how big is the plane? Just, I mean, really, how big is it? And it was a 777 at the time, the biggest plane. So I said, Bill, it's the biggest plane possible, the biggest plane out there. I mean, literally, it was 307 people were on board when this plane crashed.
Wow.
And 49 of them were injured seriously. 187 were injured in total, and 3 people died.
Yeah.
2 from the crash, and 1 person was actually thrown from the plane covered in foam. So when the ambulances arrived, one of them accidentally ran over the person.
Oh my goodness.
Yes. Total tragedy, total horrible moment. And honestly, it would come out later, so I don't have to get into this. Basically, the crash happened because the pilots were too reliant on the autopilot. There was some kind of issue with the autopilot. One of the pilots took it off and tried to land it manually, and they went too slow and too low to land properly. So when they hit the runway, the tail of the plane hit the edge of the runway and caused it to flip.
Wow.
So very terrible. But we knew it was a big deal. I'm calling in Bill. The news desk calls in Frank Somerville, the lead anchor at the time, the face of KTVU at that time. And you don't bother that guy because he's the richest guy, he's the highest paid guy on the payroll. And so if you're calling him in, it's for a big deal. But we could all see this was going to be a big deal. And the one thing to note about Frank is the first thing he did is that he came up right to me and asked what's going on, because online always knew first, because we had to be first. The scoops, breaking news, we always had to be first. If our tweets weren't clearly the first ones out there, we were being scrutinized. I mean, so this is how we operated. It was either boom or bust. We'd be sitting there waiting, and then breaking news would happen, and we'd have to turn on like robots to get it up right away. But the thing now, before I kind of get more into the accident and the aftermath, I got to talk about. And actually, yeah, this is funny. This is from Rich Lieberman, who is kind of the Bay Area blogger, a media blogger. He would basically criticize and talk about everything that was going on with the crash. And so this is him talking about how Frank Somerville killed it, and basically that was true. When we were covering this story, we controlled it. Like, national stations all across the country all used our footage and our coverage. They were kind of taking our feeds and going with it because we were so on top of it. We were the first ones to be on the story, to turn it into an important event, getting our anchor up there, cutting off all other programming on our channel just to focus on this and give you all the most updated information. And we did a great job. I mean, we were really on top of it, and, we deserved kind of the accolades that we get. But the thing was, and literally, I mean, this was actually par for the course for KTVU because we were the number 1 station at that time. Basically, I think maybe 1 or 2 shows weren't number 1 in ratings, but we were always number 1. I mean, like we just dominated. And so, this was par for the course for us. If you give us a story to cover, we're going to rock it. But the thing was, too, is it's almost like our success led to our downfall. Now, I want to talk about these two guys and the leadership of KTVU. So, on the left, or my left, looking at it, that's Tom Raponi. He was the president at the time of, or the VP of KTVU at the time of this accident. And on the right is news director Lee Rosenthal. Now, these guys were both new to the jobs when this happened. When I came onto KTVU, it was Tim McVeigh was still VP of KTVU. And if you don't know who Tim McVeigh is, he is the father of Sean McVay, coach of the Los Angeles Rams. And he went on to be president of Cox Media. So basically, KTVU was owned by Cox Media. It was a Fox affiliate. And basically, Tim worked his way up all the way to the top of the mountain. And then the news director at the time that I came on was a guy named Ed Chapuis, who was awesome. He was a real journalist. He really cared about, and he gave me my first opportunity when, honestly, I had kind of a bad reputation at that point, which is a whole other story I'll get into. Well, when I was at J school, I was in a fatal accident. And the guy who I was driving David Halberstam to an interview. David Halberstam, the Pulitzer Prize winning author of The Best and the Brightest. And basically we got in an accident and David Halberstam lost his life, and it truly tainted me. It was it's still the worst experience I've ever had.
I'm sorry, man.
Yeah, I appreciate that. And someday I'll talk more about it, but that's the reputation I had. And Ed still gave me a shot. He was a great managing news editor, a real newsman. But sadly, after Tim left, Tom came in and basically pushed Ed out. Ed definitely had pressure on him. We covered a parade one time using this new technology, and the technology really messed up. And you could see the anger in Ed. He actually punched this file holder thing, and we were like, oh, something's really up. And later, actually, somebody would pass along that he was telling people that Tom wanted Ed to fire veteran reporters at KTVU to make room for younger guys that they could manipulate. Or at least that's according to Rich Lieberman's sources.
Wow.
But yeah, so he was pushed out, and they brought in this guy, as you can see, Lee Rosenthal, who looks very rat-like, and that was definitely who he was. He had come from Indianapolis, where he worked for a television station there. He wasn't much of a news guy, but what Tom really liked about him is that he focused very much on social media, and his station in Indianapolis had over 100,000 Facebook followers, which we were all, ooh, whoop-de-doo.
Right.
And so that means he was, worth a 6-digit salary and in charge of the station. But honestly, when he came in, things changed. It was like the whole atmosphere of the newsroom changed, because Lee's demands and basically his I wouldn't say policy, but his vision for what it should be was much more extreme and not what we're used to, in the sense of way more mobile alerts, which I found annoying. If you're just getting texts all the time for stupid news stories, you don't want that. But he wanted to push that and annoy people, and also to just making bigger deals out of stories that we knew weren't big news. So
he's kind of a sensationalist.
Yes.
He's sensationalist. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. I mean, and that's one of the things that's changed over, say, the past decade and some change. All news now is way more sensational than it was, say, just 10 years ago. So he was at the forefront of the beginning of the end, right?
Yes, and truly, kind of the first news or managing news editor that I was really oh, I don't like where this is going. This doesn't feel like serving your community. This feels like prodding a community, to pay attention to me. But anyway, so back to the crash. So we kicked ass, right? We had awesome ratings. Like everyone's using our coverage. Everyone's tuning into us for our reporting on Asia on the crash. And what Tom and Lee later did is they not only wrote a press release bragging about our ratings after the crash, they made promos. So, do you want to read what this says starting from the ellipses? This is actually from Rich Lieberman's blog at the time.
Wow. Okay. Let me see here. KTVU is run by an egocentric pisshead
Yeah.
that has changed the atmosphere over at a place that used to rule the local TV news. Now, even when they get it right, and for the most part they did, they have to royally screw it up with self-serving promos 2 fucking days after the SFO crash. Who was the marketing genius that approved this bullshit? They should have hung it out to dry, but in a war of the numbers, maybe they're okay with all this. How swell. Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, that's how Rich writes about stuff. And honestly, it's like sometimes like he can have good insight, and other times like he could be a sexist pig. So he's a very controversial figure, but this is how he talks about stuff. But he was right. You don't brag about how well you cover a story. Like we were not sending press releases after Oscar Grant going like, did you see how awesome we were the first with the video, now we got a Peabody for Oscar Grant coverage, which that's how you champion yourself.
Yeah, you say you won the award. You don't go around trying to get the award by doing press on it.
Exactly. And it's disgusting after a fatal accident like this, a true tragedy, to brag about your ratings. Yeah. That is exactly what they did. It was horrifying. And then on top of that, you have this pressure now to be number one. Now, if anyone else breaks a story, we're all on the hook. Hey, we're supposed to be at the best at this. Why didn't we get this? Why aren't we first? Why aren't you doing anything, And so, yeah, just bragging about your news coverage is basically the worst thing you can do in this business, and we did it.
Wow.
So now let's get back to the Friday after the crash. Well, it starts with this guy, oh, dang it. The story. Oh no, what happened to it? Sorry. So there should be a picture of Roland DeWalk here. Now Roland, he was an investigative reporter, who he was like a special investigations reporter. Like he, like a kind of Lowell Bergman kind of style. Like he would break big stories after like months of investigation, and really he would, exploit sources and dig deep into documents and find the stuff that like special reports, like your 60 minutes kind of style, right. like a big one that I remember is when he basically investigated the president of the Port of Oakland and found she had been blowing a ton of money on flights all across the nation, basically misusing funds. Right. That's the kind of story Roland would report on. And on this day, he basically gets an email with the subject saying, like, here's the names of the pilots.
Right.
And apparently, this is from his mouth. He told me he was busy out doing something and he couldn't look at the email. So he just like straight up just forwarded it to his special reports producer, Christina Gastelou. Now, okay. Christina Gastelou at this time was a seasoned producer. She had been working in TV since the 90s on these kind of special projects, and she was really good. And, her job was really important because while, reporters have their own kind of idea for their stories, like what's important, and like just if they could, they would just like do what they want and be done with it. But you need people like Christina to make sure you're getting all the facts, the stories make sense, And that's what she did. And she was great at it. I mean, she was an executive producer at this time, and she had earned her place. So,
Okay, did Roland ever tell you exactly where that original email with the names came from, though?
yes. So Roland told me it was from a source in his, like an aviation industry source.
Okay.
So, and I believe he even said it was an ex-pilot, but it was but I think what it really had happened, because I found while researching the story back when the crash happened, that there was a lot of aviation discussion forums. So there's a lot of places where basically all these pilots would come and talk about stuff. And that's when I learned the most about the plane and like what had happened and and so there's a lot of discussion. And I believe this was a joke on a discussion board.
Wow.
Yeah. So, I mean, that's one of those things too. Discussion boards, when they think they're private, it's like the 8chans, the 4chans. I used to work for a place called Police One, which was like a news site that catered just to cops, and it had its own discussion board. Whoo.
I would not want to see that.
Oh, man.
I would not want to see that.
It would enrage you every day.
I couldn't possibly. Okay, but so the reason I'm asking that is because I read that the National Aviation Safety Group, or whatever it's called, that in order to confirm the name, you guys contacted KTVU, actually contacted somebody, and it was a summer intern who said, yes, these are in fact the names.
Yes. Okay, so this was one of basically this was the big mistake. This is when it all really starts to snowball. So basically Christina didn't know 3 things before she called the NTSB. And if she would have known these 3 things, she wouldn't have done this. For one, the NTSB, if they're in the middle of an investigation, now let's point out the National Transportation Safety Board, after big plane crashes and stuff like that, they're the governmental body that investigates what happened, hoping to prevent these things in the future. Sully and the miracle on the Hudson, that whole movie, Sully, is about him against the National Transportation Safety Board. So this is the body that's doing it. Now, what I don't think Christina knew is that, the NTSB doesn't give out pilots' names during investigation. And especially wouldn't give you anything in a cold call. Basically, the information they wanted you to have would come out in press releases and press conferences to all reporters. Nobody had a special line in.
Right.
So, but she didn't know that. She was old school, She was going, hey, all right, so what's the body that would be, what is the official body that would confirm these names to me? Oh, the NTSB. They're the people that would know. So when she calls up, now she talks to an intern, and she didn't know. And apparently she even asked who he was or what he did. She basically called up, and he said, yeah, that sounds about right. And that was it, but again, though, too, remember this high pressure situation.
Right.
We're trying to scoop everybody. We got these names. We got to get them out. We got to get them on air as fast as possible, because we've already been bragging about how we're the best. Let's keep showing how we're the best. So, I mean, and honestly, this is probably minutes before the noon show would be going on air. They're trying to get it all ready to go. But the third thing that she didn't know was that if she would have just did a quick Google search, or even just looked on KTVU's own website, she would have learned that we already had 2 of the pilots' names.
Wow.
The Associated Press had already named or discovered and reported 2 of the pilots' names. So, but that was very common for TV people. And like old school journalists, there's a lot of resentment for the web. Everyone hated that there's this kind of new thing that really was kind of messing things up. And instead of adjusting to it, instead of embracing it, which is what everyone should have done, they kind of fought it and resented it. And so, honestly, like all she needed to do was even just come and talk to us. Hey, have you heard about these names? Barely anyone did. That's why it was so notable. Frank came to us first and kind of shows actually how good at his job he was, but even worse, like we would never even get credit for this kind of stuff, like, after the crash happened and we had all these great ratings, Lee Rosenthal sent out this big email to the entire newsroom and staff congratulating everyone. And he basically went through every on-air talent and thanked them personally. And I think the website got a footnote.
Well, I also wanted to ask you another question. Right now, what we're looking at is, now we do have Asian representation, a lot of Asian representation in our local TV news. What was the composition of were there Asian people on staff that could have caught this before? Because one of the things I'm always talking about. There she is.
Okay. Thank you for asking this question.
Yes. Okay. So please explain her presence and what she did.
So this is Michelle Toy. Now, Michelle Toy was awesome. I actually, at first, like here on the web team, we were kind of like iffy about her because she came in as a managing editor, but then she dumped in to being head of social media, which my boss, who's the head of the web team, was not happy about. That was encroaching on his his territory. But she was awesome. She was super smart. Really one of the smartest people I've ever gotten to work with. Really knew her stuff, really nice. And obviously she's Asian. So now, as it goes, or at least from what I've seen reported and what I've talked to, is that, these names went through a couple people. And Michelle was one of the last people that were talked to about it. And she was the one that put up the red flag. She not only said, these sound fake, these sound like a joke. She also even noted that the pilots were Korean and these names sounded Chinese to her.
Right. See, and that's why you have to have diversity in your staff. That's exactly why you need diversity. And of course, she was ignored because it happened anyway.
Exactly. Especially when you have somebody going, well, the NTSB confirmed it for us.
Wow.
So that's what it. So now, she did try to stop it. And honestly, I've seen her be criticized too. Like people say she should. I saw that at least in Lieberman, some of her coworkers were saying she should have been fired for this, and I hate that so much. We should have listened to her, but then again, she stayed at KTVU a lot longer than a lot of other people, and I think it's because she was smart and they recognized she was trying to do the right thing. Right. Now, the last person that could have stopped it is this man. This is Elvin Sledge. He was the longtime producer of the noon show. Okay. And basically, when this story finally made its way onto the teleprompter, Elvin was in the middle of the show producing. And he years in the news industry, very smart man, wonderful, super nice, just a lovely guy all around. And really, I think in that moment, would have been hard for him to stop what was coming next. I think in the fact that he's in the middle of the show, trying to coordinate things, trying to make sure, because that's the thing, when you're airing the show, it's like you need to be an octopus. Like there's so many things going on, graphics coming on, video, you're going like from one camera to another and to this report and that report. And you're trying to keep everything organized. You're trying to make sure there's no errors going on. Like it's a real tension sucking job that you're in. And so I think it would have been really hard for him to in any way push back. So basically, the whole thing goes online, and we've already played the clip, but there it went on. And so after the thing airs, basically what happens next is my boss.
Serious fallout is what happens next.
Yeah,
Serious
my boss stands up in the middle of the show or in the newsroom and screams out, that's not the names. Those aren't the names. He like literally stood up. What he told me is he stood up and goes, those aren't the names. And the newsroom went silent. And if you ever been in a newsroom before, those things are not ever silent.
Yeah, no, it's always chatter. It's always chatter.
Yeah, totally.
Wow.
So basically, everyone knew that something had messed up. But poor Tori was already on there. She was already doing it. And there was nothing they could do. So before the end of the show, they got Tori on to apologize for the names, to admit the mistake. And then later news shows,
Coroner is still trying to determine the cause.
I hate how they does that. They got Frank Somerville on to make an apology.
We have new information now also on the plane crash. KTVU has just learned the name crashed. Not accurate, despite an NTSB official in Washington confirming them late this morning. We apologize for this error.
Tonight, we want to take a moment and say that we are sorry. Earlier today, during our noon newscast, we misidentified the pilots in the Asiana Airlines crash. We made several mistakes when we received this information. First of all, we never read the names out loud, phonetically sounding them out. Then during our phone call to the NTSB, where the person confirmed the spellings of the names, we never asked that person to give us their position within the agency. We heard this person verify the information without questioning who they were, and then we rushed the names onto our noon newscast. Within the last few minutes, the NTSB issued this statement, quote, "The National Transportation Safety Board apologizes for inaccurate and offensive names that were mistakenly confirmed as those of the pilots. A summer intern acted outside the scope of his authority when he erroneously confirmed the names of the flight crew on the aircraft. We work hard to ensure that only appropriate factual information regarding an investigation is released, and we deeply regret today's incident. Appropriate actions will be taken to ensure that such a serious error is not repeated." Now, even with this statement from the NTSB, we want you to know here we accept full responsibility for this mistake. We issued an apology later in the noon newscast. We also apologized on our website and on our social media sites. The fact is, we have a lot of good people here at Channel 2. And on behalf of all of us, I want to tell you that we pride ourselves on getting it right and having the highest of standards and integrity. Clearly, today, that did not happen. We made a mistake. So again, from all of us here at KTVU, we can only offer our sincerest apology in this case.
We have new information now.
Now, clearly, that didn't do anything. They tried, but guess what? It was what was done. And so I wasn't there that day. I heard everything about it, but I was there the next day, and I was basically thrown into the middle of the fallout. And what was that fallout? Constant abuse online. I mean, not only Asiana was already had threatened to sue the station for what had happened. Because, I mean, literally, you're causing them pain with a racist joke in the middle of, one of the worst disasters in a long while for that. I mean, for what we had seen. And on top of that, everyone, it's racism. Well, everyone should be mad.
Yeah, I think that's the most interesting part is that, what Somerville did not say was to apologize on the fact that they actually ran a racist story. The story is actually a racist story, right? It's anti-Asian hate is what it is. And so, I mean, and especially when you're talking about something around a great tragedy. So tell me who got fired.
All All righty. Well, yeah, we'll get there in a second. But I want to point out that it was miserable working at the station after this.
Wow.
Miserable. Especially so a part of being on the web desk, what did I get to do? I got to monitor social media. And I remember it's like burned into my brain of looking at the tweet deck. So, that's when, tweet deck was everything. And I could do, I could even post to Facebook and everything else. And I just had the feeds going of what everyone was sending to us. And it was constantly like, all abuse. Like so many. And, clearly like Koreans, just everyone just jumping on and just telling us how much they hate us. Fuck you, you suck, I hate you, blah, blah, blah. Just over. And I want to say it read like this, like truly like Matrix style, just over and over again of just abuse for 6 weeks. Just everyone letting us know how much they hated us, how terrible we are, how racist we were. And even though there's a lot of people that had nothing to do with it, we all got the abuse.
Right.
So now, also on top of that, not only are they going to get sued by Asiana, Cox Media, the parental station, the big corporation that owned the station, was going to do its own investigation, which meant, yes, people were going to get fired. And they were really pissed off too, because it's a family-owned company, and they their reputation was the most important thing ever. And so they were real pissed. So it didn't help too, like right here, as you can see, I'm not going to play it, but we were on Colbert and we were on the Daily Show too. So we were getting made fun of by late night TV, everything else. It was like, that was almost like a good thing that happened from us, because at least like there was some, there's some kind of humor to it, but it was still just the most awful time. So now, first off, I want to get into oh dang, why not another thing went away? Okay. 3 people got fired. Now, this person here, he wasn't fired, but I'm going to get into him second. Now, the 3 people that were fired were Christina, the producer, Roland, the initial reporter, and a producer named Brad Bellstock. Now, Brad had nothing to do with the show. Brad was actually, I believe at the time, he was a producer for the 5 o'clock show. But, he was a guy that kept up with trends. So he was trying to get his name out there on social media. So after the names went out, he just tweeted on his account, "Oh shit." That was it. That's all he did. And then not long after that, after being reminded by somebody, hey, don't do that. There's a corporate social media policy. He still got fired because of this guy on the right with the glasses and the blue shirt. Now, that is Matthew Keys. Now, that's Matthew Keys leaving court because, if you know anything about Matthew Keys, he's a very online reply guy. And he was once like kind of a rising star in online news world, but I'll always know him as an internet troll. He kind of made a name for himself with social media because he was just on Twitter all the time and constantly posting. And before then, he was on boards and blogging and stuff. But he really made a name for himself because he was so fast posting things and scooping people because he was online all the time. But he did so well. He got such a good reputation that he actually he worked his way up all the way to Reuters. But the thing about Matt too was that he made a ton of mistakes. For example, when he was at Reuters, he was there running social media during the Boston Marathon bombing.
I remember that.
And he got in a bunch of trouble because he was reporting scanner talk, which is a huge no-no during breaking news, especially disasters, that kind of thing. Right. Scanner talk is basically cops just kind of passing things along but not everything is accurate. Not everything is real. So if you hear something on the scanner, you can take note of it, but you don't air it. And he did air it. And so he spread a lot of inaccuracies. I mean, actually, I don't know how many inaccuracies, but definitely inaccuracies were spread in the news because of him.
Right.
But an even bigger mistake he made happened back in 2010 when he was fired from Fox 40, which was up in Sacramento. It was owned by the Tribune Company, and I don't know why they fired him, but he was angry. So what he ended up doing is he let hackers from Anonymous, like he gave them his login info.
Wow.
And they ended up, and at the time, the Tribune Company owned the LA Times. So they basically hacked into the LA Times and changed the headline.
Wow.
So it wasn't a lot of damage, but the fact that he did that.
Yeah, the malicious intent, like you're actually trying to sabotage your job. I mean, that's ridiculous.
Exactly. Now, later, some websites and like internet activists would try to downplay that, like, oh, nothing happened. But he's still, I mean, he broke the law, and it was and so it's hard to be sympathetic to him, or at least in my opinion. But
Agreed.
so the day he was indicted was the same year as the crash. It was 2013. And the day that he was indicted, my boss, Bill, wrote a story for our website about his indictment. That was it. It's news. This guy did this. And basically that was kind of Bill's MO. He would get on and, write a story from scratch that he thought was unique, because that was a great way to get SEO. That was like a great SEO trick, which was custom stuff that your competitors don't have.
Right.
And it's something you could really focus on. So he just wrote a story. He did his job.
Okay.
But here's the thing. That pissed off Matthew to no end. I mean, it sent him off on a revenge mission. And from then on, he started hounding us. And seriously, was so critical of us. And then when the accident happened, it was like Christmas for him. He was loving it. And he was constantly, like, that's kind of what made his name for himself during this time. He has a website, a blog called The Desk, and he was trying to break news about us. He was seriously targeting us, focused on us. So when he saw the tweet from Brad, he reported that Brad was the producer, or at least like might have been the producer, but he basically snitched on Brad. And since Brad got attention drawn to him, he got fired.
Wow. So this guy's actually angry because he got reported on breaking the law.
Yes.
He wanted revenge because somebody reported that he broke the law.
And he was open about it. He was open about it online. Through KTVU, I would get in arguments with him because he was so awful. And I was so angry about what he did to Brad. But then I would get calls from Lee going, stop it now. Leave him alone. Leave him alone. Like,
he'd be hard to leave alone. I would have difficulty leaving him alone too.
You know what? He got his in the end. I mean, he later, in 2016, he went to prison. He got 2 years for the hacking.
Wow.
And thankfully Brad turned out way better because he got another job pretty quickly, and he's now a reunion rep and he's doing great. So thankfully it didn't hurt Brad as much as it could have, pushed him out of the business like what happened to a lot of other people.
Yeah.
And really, but the saddest moment, all this, was Elvin.
Yeah, what happened to him?
Elvin was it's been reported that he was thinking about retiring anyway before this, but it's hard not to think that he was kind of forced to retire because of this. Because he was young. He still had a lot of time to work. And he was such a good guy, and he was so important to that noon. I mean, he really made that noon show what it was. He deserves, he was a great producer, but basically it was hard not to think that he fell on his sword for the company.
Wow.
And the worst part was they had this kind of big retirement ceremony, which was so sad. I mean, there was not a dry eye in the house because everyone was just like angry and frustrated what happened to truly a wonderful person. And I mean, you know, Tom Rapone came down, and admittedly, Elvin is a big A's fan, and so his retirement gift was box seats for the A's. When this is before what they're going through now, and everyone's like, sell,
Right.
but it was still not that big of a present.
I
Like
mean,
if you ever,
because
yeah, if you ever go to an A's box, it's like hot dogs and cheap beer.
yeah, exactly. I mean, that sounds like peanuts, really.
Exactly. And
I mean,
especially for the heat he was taking away.
Yeah. I mean, he kind of was like a scapegoat. I mean, like the other two people, like clearly were like messed up somewhere. Like you didn't confirm this, and you broke a social media policy, but it kind of just passed underneath your radar. It wasn't even really your job to read the names, right?
Yes.
So like he's just the scapegoat, the highest guy up on the ladder. They could do something too. That's really sad.
Yeah, and the thing is, that's the worst part about it is like I mean, that's what other producers are for. That was Christina's job. That was Roland's job. And that's what Michelle tried to stop. Like,
Right.
These were other people. He was in the middle of his show when this all happened, and it's just unfair that he had to take any blame for it. Thankfully, though, he right after being forced to retire, his retirement, he went into education, and he's a journalism teacher for Laney College and always has been. So thankfully, he was still able to land on his feet. And
that's awesome. I mean, okay, so I mean, as far as like we spent a lot of time talking around KTVU at its current iteration, and all of there's serious problems going on, especially when it comes to concern with the Doom Loop. The way Henry K. Lee, for example, he's completely a sensationalist journalist.
Yes.
He has a tendency of sometimes not really waiting until like he does scanner talk quite a bit. Like, can you talk about how you think that transformation came to be? I mean, because in a lot of ways, it does sound as if that the beginning of the end for KTVU as a serious news source. I mean, I have to say that KTVU in this current iteration is sometimes terribly unserious. When do you think that transformation began? And like, do a compare and contrast for me.
You absolutely nailed it. This was the beginning of the end for KTVU. Because after the investigation and the lawsuits, Roland sued and actually, I believe, settled. But basically, after the investigation, after the firings, Cox was done with KTVU, and they made a deal with Fox News. Fox News had been dying to get into this market. It's true. It's a top 5 market, and what do they want to start doing? Start getting that Fox News narrative in there. So Cox was done with us, and they basically made like a trade. They got Fox News, got KTVU, and Cox Media got, I believe, a station in Memphis and a station in Boston. And the Boston station is where actually Tom here and Lee both went to. And another point, neither of them lasted that long. Lee lasted 2 years before he was fired, and Tom lasted 3 years before he retired. So it didn't really work out for them. But yes, this was the end, because under Fox News, that's when KTVU was dead. That's Fox News. They came in for one of the first things they did is they wiped the servers, the online servers of all our past reporting, of all our own news stories. That Peabody winning coverage of Oscar Grant and the Meserly trial, gone.
Wow, man. Wow.
Wiped. Everything. Our San Bruno coverage. Remember the San Bruno explosions, the gas explosions?
Oh yeah. Absolutely.
That coverage gone.
Wow.
Everything, like years, decades of history, they just wiped, and they had no remorse.
Jeez. So do you think they did that in order to just like get rid of anything that they felt was leaning to a certain left or center? Do you think that's why they did that, or was it just to make space?
I think it's part of their MO. I think they think that, I mean, honestly, they're in the news business, but they obviously don't have any real value or other than monetarily, for
Right.
the news. Like, they don't care what it means to a community. I
Mhm.
mean, that is how Murdoch is always run. This is a guy that like made a name for himself in London because he put topless women in his newspapers on
Yep.
page 3.
Yep.
Like, and would even put in topless teenagers, by the
Wow.
way. Samantha
Wow.
Fox was a minor when she was put topless.
Wow.
And I believe it's the Times of London. I don't know, but one of Murdoch's papers.
Yeah.
So, I mean, literally they care about money, and that's it. Like, they don't care about any of the external values.
But
And
you also like are pointing out something that we already know after the Tucker Carlson case, where Fox had to admit that they were not a news source but an entertainment channel.
yes.
Right. So I mean, that's something that a lot of people don't know. A lot of people don't understand that, like, now KTVU falls under the umbrella of an entertainment channel. It's not really a news channel anymore because it's owned by the company that already said that we are entertainment. We are not news. So I just wanted to point that out because because we're now looking at KTVU, and a lot of people are still looking at KTVU as if it's a legitimate news source. But if the parent company is not, therefore all of their extended affiliates aren't either. So I just want that's just really interesting to me.
Right on. That is absolutely it. And that is very true. And honestly, a lot of people knew the writing was on a wall. People left in droves, but also Fox News cleared out a lot of the like old timers, the veterans that really knew, like the people that, you could be like, hey, did we have anything on this? And like would know, like, oh yeah, back in 96, we did a big story about this and that kind of thing. I believe that producer, Leslie McDonald, who had like kind of a history of the news show on Sunday nights. I mean, I believe her name was Leslie McDonald. She was awesome, but yeah, she was booted. Anybody that knew anything about the station was gone.
Well, they wiped out the entire institutional memory.
Yes.
The entire institutional memory was erased because you guys were number one, right? That's really what it was, right?
Yes. And the worst part is that, I mean, before then, we were talking about doing a whole archival project where we were going to put everything online so people could access it.
Right.
All of our old reports. I mean, we had so many great historic stories on a beta tape and reel to reels that we could have tapped into,
Awesome. That would have been awesome.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Who cares about history of the Bay Area? I don't know. I mean, it was just awful. And so, yeah, you're absolutely right. This led to the end. I mean, I kind of think that's why too, Frank Somerville, his problems that he's having now, I really think it's because of this change and what we've all seen the news change into, especially TV news.
Yeah.
Honestly, before then, you had a lot of gatekeepers that really cared about doing real news and not Fox stuff. Before this, when KTVU was just a Fox affiliate, because we were an affiliate, Fox News would send us packages, from like that were basically Fox News reports. So they always were pretty biased in some way. I remember like, why are they doing a story about like the future of the Republican Party in California? It's like dead. Who cares? And it's basically like an advertisement, and like producers would be like, F you, I'm not running that,
But now they have to, right? Now they have to.
Exactly.
Man, what a story, dude.
Yeah, seriously. And I gotta say too, like by then, I got out too. Everything became miserable after that. And so I got out and I went to KQED and I was not alone. And, but a lot of people did stay in television news, but now it seems like what Fox turned into, honestly, is like all the TV stations now. They all run the like Doomloop retail crime ring stuff. Like it's all like that.
Well, I mean, and like, I think that's something like, that we can dig into even deeper, like in another cast, because I still question like where is the funding coming from? Like, can a reporter say at KTVU have an independent contract someplace else? Are they serving two masters? Is that a possibility? And is there any way that we could like find out if that were true? I mean, like, because Betty Yu, Dion Lim, Henry K. Lee, Dan Noyes, they all have their own private Twitter accounts that they report so-called news from.
Yep.
But often that news doesn't end up on the news, right? like so Henry K. Lee can actually report something on his private account, and it never ends up on KTVU. Right. So so is that really an official news source? That's the kind of question. But that's for another time. We were at the hour mark.
Yeah. Well, I just want to make one last comment before we go.
Yeah.
A lot of people say this is a prank. When people discuss this incident, they call it a prank. It was not a prank. I don't think that intern was pranking people. I think he was just thought he was trying to help.
Yeah.
I mean, maybe, he heard it, was like, yeah, sure. But I don't think there was any malice to what happened.
Well, I think the malice actually happened in the forum.
Yeah.
I believe that like the real problem began in the forum when racist pilots were talking to each other, and they thought that this would be funny to talk about dead people like this.
Yes, yeah, and make a stupid racist joke.
Yeah,
exactly.
Like a stupid racist joke, right? So, but I think that from what you told me, the only person who was actually really truly racist was the person who made the joke on the forum.
Yes.
The person who actually wrote the names down on the forum. Now, unfortunately, like, because you're saying, like, everything's so rapid pace, right? So I can see where this kind of thing could happen and why it did happen. I personally don't think it's funny at all. I don't know how, I can't see how anybody would think that this was some kind of joke, right? It's not really.
A lot of people were hurt.
Yeah, a lot of people were hurt, and that's crazy. And so, like, I just want to say, man, like, thanks for the rundown on that. I really appreciate, like, because I'm very curious about what's happening. As a journalist myself, I'm very curious about what's happening in the world of journalism as we are going through this really tumultuous time. I mean, like, and some people are just not being able to do a transition with the way, like journalism cannot remain what it was.
Yes.
Right. But that doesn't mean that journalism has to become what it's becoming now.
Yeah.
So I mean, I think that's like, one of the things we'll probably, because we're both news guys, so we'll eventually come back to this. I know.
Exactly. Yeah. Because the issue, I mean, I don't think what happened back then would happen today. I mean, you would think people would be smart enough to now just go straight to the website to confirm before doing anything. Right. But yeah, the problems now are much different, and I would say almost more insidious.
Yes. But sometimes, I mean, definitely there's an intent there that wasn't there before. I mean, like the thing was like, I remember even back when I was a cub reporter at my little paper in West Virginia, I mean, one of the things that we really did was, well, one, everybody cared, like you were saying before, but even more than that, like, we fact checked everything. You couldn't just put whatever in a newspaper. You just couldn't do it, but it seems these days it's like, people just like toss things out there. And when we talk about all the time, people using opinion pieces as actual news.
Oh yeah.
Right. Like, and how that line has become blurred, so these are a lot of things we could talk about, but let's do that another time.
Sounds good, man.
So let's wrap this up. What are you what's the plan? What's the plan for us? Are we gonna go? What are we doing next week?
Next week, we're going to be talking to Toshio, the host of Sad Francisco, about what he's seeing in San Francisco and, his reporting, because he's like us. He's a longtime news reporter who started a podcast because he was frustrated on what has been coming out from legacy media,
Yeah.
So we're going to have plenty to talk about for sure.
And I think dude is awesome. I mean, like I follow him on Twitter, and he does really great work. He be so succinct.
Yeah.
I'm looking forward to seeing how this guy actually concentrates like so much information into like a 30-second clip. I mean, he's really good at that.
Yeah, exactly. It's going to be a great talk. He's a
Yeah.
great interviewer. And anyways, thanks again, Doom Loopers. Thanks for joining us. And
Absolutely.
make sure to follow us on YouTube, on social media. We're on Twitter, we're on Instagram, and we have a Patreon. So please support us there.
Yeah, absolutely.
Awesome. All right. Till next week. And I'll see you, Scott.
All right, man. Peace.
Bye.